The massive ship appeared without warning on a Tuesday afternoon. One moment, the sky above New York City was clear and blue. The next moment, a shadow fell across the entire eastern coast of America. People stopped walking. Cars crashed into each other. Children pointed at the sky and asked their parents what that thing was. The ship was black and shaped like a crescent moon. It stretched for nearly 50 kilometers from end to end. It hung in the sky like a mountain that had forgotten how to fall. Within minutes, every military base on Earth went to high alert. Fighter jets scrambled into the air. Submarines changed course. Nuclear launch codes were retrieved from their safes. But everyone who looked at that ship knew the same terrible truth. Human weapons looked like toys compared to this thing. The broadcast came 3 hours later. Every screen on Earth flickered at the same time. Televisions, phones, computers, even digital billboards in the middle of nowhere showed the same image. A creature appeared on every screen. It stood nearly 3 meters tall on 6 thin legs. Its body was covered in dark green armor that might have been skin or might have been clothing. Its face had no nose, just 2 large black eyes and a mouth full of small, sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. I am Ambassador Kethral of the Vethkai hegemony. I speak on behalf of the Galaxy Council, the ruling body of 4,000 civilized species. You have been observed. You have been measured. You have been judged. Kethral paused. His black eyes showed no emotion at all. Your species is hereby classified as seeded. Your worlds will be harvested for resources needed by the Council. Your population will be relocated to work colonies, where you will serve productive roles in our civilization. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a classification. Around the world, billions of people watched in silence. Some cried. Some screamed. Some simply stared, unable to believe what they were seeing. You have 12 rotations of your planet to prepare for transition, Kethral continued. All weapons must be destroyed. All leaders must present themselves for processing. Any resistance will be met with appropriate correction. The ambassador tilted his head slightly, as if considering something amusing. I should tell you that 312 species have attempted resistance before classification. All of them now serve the Council. Many of their homeworlds no longer exist. Do not make the mistake of believing you are special. You are not. You are simply the latest addition to our civilization. The screen went black. For a long moment, the world was silent. Then the chaos began. In Geneva, the headquarters of the United Earth Coalition filled with shouting voices. Military leaders demanded immediate strikes against the alien ship. Scientists warned that human weapons would be useless against technology so advanced. Politicians argued about whether surrender was the only option that would save lives. Secretary General Elena Vasquez sat at the head of the long table and listened to all of them. She was 62 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent her life believing in diplomacy and peaceful solutions. She had helped end 3 wars through negotiation alone. But as she listened to the arguments around her, she felt something cold and hard forming in her chest. Enough, she said quietly. The room did not hear her. The shouting continued. Enough, she shouted, slamming her palm on the table. Silence fell. Everyone turned to look at her. I have heard your arguments, she said. I have heard that we cannot win. I have heard that surrender will save lives. I have heard that we should accept our place in their civilization. She stood up slowly. Now I have a question for all of you. She looked around the room at the generals and scientists and politicians. Many of them could not meet her eyes. Ambassador Kethral said that 312 species have attempted resistance. He said they all serve the Council now. Some of their worlds were destroyed. She paused. Has anyone noticed what he did not say? General Marcus Webb, the American military commander, frowned. What do you mean? He said they attempted resistance. He said they now serve. Vasquez walked slowly around the table. He did not say they were defeated quickly. He did not say it was easy. He said some of their worlds were destroyed. That means some of their worlds were not destroyed. That means the Council paid a price for those victories. With respect, said Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief science advisor. Even if that is true, what difference does it make? Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. We cannot win. Perhaps not. Vasquez agreed. But let me ask you something else. Those 312 species who resisted and lost, what do you think they would tell us if they could? Nobody answered. I think they would tell us that they wish they had fought harder. I think they would tell us that slavery is not survival. I think they would tell us that some things are worth dying for. Vasquez returned to her seat. The ambassador expects us to surrender because every species before us has surrendered. He expects us to be afraid because fear is reasonable. She looked at the screen where Kethral's image had appeared. But humanity has never been reasonable. We have fought wars over insults. We have climbed mountains because they were there. We have gone to the moon with less computing power than a modern phone. We do not do things because they are possible. We do things because we refuse to accept that they are impossible. General Webb leaned forward. What exactly are you suggesting? Madam Secretary General. Vasquez smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had made a decision that would change everything. I am suggesting that we become the 313th species to resist. But unlike the others, we will not just attempt resistance. She stood again and looked at every person in the room. We will show this council what happens when they threaten the wrong planet. We will make them pay such a price that they will never dare to threaten another species again. That could mean the death of billions, Dr. Chen whispered. Surrender means the death of everything we are. Vasquez replied. Our freedom, our dignity, our future. Everything that makes us human will be taken away and replaced with whatever role they choose for us. She walked to the window and looked up at the sky where the massive ship still hung like a threat. 12 days, she said quietly. We have 12 days to prepare our answer. I suggest we use them well. Behind her, the room began to change. The argument stopped. The fear remained. But something else joined it. Something older and fiercer. Something that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed them. Hope was a luxury they could not afford. But defiance was free. And humanity had always had plenty of that. The world had 12 days to prepare for war against an enemy that had conquered hundreds of species. It was not enough time. Everyone knew it was not enough time. They prepared anyway. On the first day, old enemies became allies. The President of the United States called the leaders of Russia and China. Conversations that would normally take months of careful diplomacy took hours. By sunset, every nuclear power on Earth had agreed to share their arsenals, their scientists, and their secrets. We can argue about borders when we still have a planet, the Russian president said during the call. Nobody disagreed. On the second day, Dr. James Okonkwo made a discovery that would change everything. Dr. Okonkwo was a physicist from Nigeria who had spent 20 years studying theoretical physics. He was brilliant but unknown. Working at a small university with limited funding, when the alien broadcast reached Earth, he did what scientists do. He studied it. The signal, he told his colleagues, his eyes wide with excitement and fear. The signal they used to broadcast to every screen on Earth. It contains information they did not mean to share. What kind of information? Asked his assistant, a young woman named Adaora. Instructions. Mathematical instructions for something called fold space technology. It is how they travel faster than light. They included it in their broadcast signal because their own ships use it for communication. He laughed, and there was something wild in that laugh. They gave us the keys to their kingdom because they never imagined we would know how to use them. Within hours, Dr. Okonkwo was on a plane to Geneva. Within days, he was leading a team of the world's best scientists in a secret facility beneath the Swiss mountains. We cannot build their engines, he explained to the military commanders. We do not have the materials or the time, but we can do something else. We can attach fold space devices to our missiles. They will not fly through space faster than light, but they will be able to jump short distances. They will be able to appear on the other side of any shield. General Webb stared at him. You are saying we can make missiles that teleport? In simple terms, yes, but only once, and only for a short distance. Perhaps a few hundred meters. A few hundred meters is enough to get inside their ships. Dr. Okonkwo nodded slowly. That is the idea. On the 5th day, the weapons factories of Earth began producing new missiles. They looked almost the same as the old nuclear missiles. But each one carried a small device built from Dr. Okonkwo's calculations. Workers called them blink warheads because they would blink through space in the final moment before impact. While the scientists worked on the blink warheads, the military prepared other surprises. Admiral Chen Wei-lin of the Chinese Navy coordinated the defense of Earth from a bunker deep beneath Beijing. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had fought pirates in the South China Sea and had never lost a ship under her command. Now she commanded every navy on Earth. We cannot match their firepower, she told her staff. So we will not try. We will use numbers. We will use speed. We will use the one advantage we have over them. What advantage is that? Asked one of her officers. They think we are already beaten. They think this will be easy. They are not prepared for a species that fights like we do. 4 ATP. They think we are already beaten. They think we are already beaten. Admiral Chen ordered the construction of 10,000 drones. They were small and cheap, each one about the size of a large bird. They carried no weapons except themselves. Their only purpose was to fly into enemy engines and explode. Suicide drones, someone called them. Victory drones, Admiral Chen corrected. Their sacrifice will mean something. On the 8th day, Ambassador Kethrol contacted Earth again. His image appeared on screens around the world, just like before. He looked exactly the same. Calm. Cold. Completely certain of his own power. I have observed your preparations, he said. Your weapons. Your factories. Your little machines. His mouth moved in what might have been a smile. It is amusing. Like watching insects build walls against a flood. I almost admire your determination, even though it is pointless. He leaned closer to the camera. I will give you one more chance. Surrender now, and I will recommend mercy. Your population will be reduced by only 30% instead of 50%. Your leaders will be allowed to live as servants rather than being executed. This is my final offer. Secretary General Vasquez appeared on screen in response. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes and new lines on her face. She had not slept more than a few hours since the invasion began, but her voice was steady. Ambassador Kethrol, I have consulted with every nation on Earth. I have spoken with presidents and kings, generals and scientists, farmers and factory workers. I have heard from billions of human beings who watched your message and your threats. She paused. They have given me their answer to deliver to you. And what is that answer? Kethrol asked, sounding almost bored. Come and take it. The ambassador's eyes widened slightly. It was the first emotion anyone had seen from him. You are making a terrible mistake. Perhaps. But it is our mistake to make. This is our planet. These are our people. And we will decide our own fate. Not you. She ended the transmission. On the 12th day, as the deadline expired, the people of Earth looked up at the sky. The alien ship still hung there, dark and massive and terrifying. But something had changed. The fear was still there, but it had been joined by something else. Pride. Determination. The stubborn refusal to kneel that had defined humanity since the first humans stood upright and refused to be prey. In bunkers and command centers around the world, soldiers checked their weapons. Scientists made final adjustments to the blink warheads. Pilots climbed into their jets and said goodbye to their families. Admiral Chen Wei-lin looked at the screens showing the alien fleet beginning to move toward Earth. 47 ships, each one larger than any human vessel. Enough firepower to burn the planet clean. They are coming, one of her officers said quietly. Yes, Admiral Chen replied. Let them come. We are ready. She pressed the button that would begin the launch sequence for every missile on Earth. For Earth, she said. For humanity. For everyone who ever looked at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. The first missiles rose from their silos. The war for Earth had begun. The sky above Earth became fire. 10,000 missiles rose from every continent at once. They came from underground silos in America and Russia. They came from submarines hidden in every ocean. They came from trucks parked in deserts and mountains and forests. Humanity had spent 70 years building weapons to destroy itself. Now, all those weapons had a new target. Ambassador Kethrall watched from the bridge of his flagship as the missiles climbed toward his fleet. His officers tracked each one with bored efficiency. They had done this many times before, with many other species. Primitive nuclear weapons, his weapons officer reported. "Shall I begin defensive fire?" "Yes," Kethrall said. "Destroy them all. Let the humans see how useless their resistance is." Quote, the hegemony ships opened fire. Beams of blue energy swept across the sky like the fingers of an angry god. Each beam destroyed dozens of missiles at once. The humans watching from below saw their weapons vanish in flashes of light. In the first minute alone, 3,000 missiles were destroyed. But more kept coming. For every missile the hegemony destroyed, 2 more rose to take its place. The humans had launched everything they had. Old missiles and new missiles. Big missiles and small missiles. Some were decoys with no warheads at all. Designed only to confuse and overwhelm. "There are too many," the weapons officer said, his voice showing the first hint of concern. "Our guns cannot track them all. Our guns cannot track them all." "Impossible," Kethrall replied. "We have destroyed fleets with this defense system. How can primitives with nuclear weapons threaten us?" Then the blink warheads activated. Dr. Okonkwo watched from the bunker in Switzerland as his calculations proved correct. One moment, 100 missiles were flying toward the hegemony shields. The next moment, those missiles vanished. They reappeared inside the shields. Inside the ships themselves, nuclear fire bloomed in the heart of 7 dreadnoughts at once. The explosions were beautiful and terrible. Each ship was larger than a city. And each ship died screaming. Metal twisted and melted. Atmosphere vented into space in great white plumes. Thousands of hegemony soldiers died in seconds, never understanding what had happened. On the bridge of the flagship, Kethrall stared at his screens in disbelief. 7 of his ships were gone. Not damaged, gone. Torn apart from the inside by weapons that should not have been able to touch them. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" "Unknown energy signature on the missiles," his science officer reported, her voice shaking. "They appear to be using a form of fold space technology. That is impossible. They could not have developed that technology in 12 days. They did not develop it," the science officer said slowly. "They stole it. From our broadcast signal. They used our own technology against us." For the first time in his long career, Kethrall felt something he had never felt before when facing a primitive species. Fear. But fear quickly turned to rage. "All ships," he commanded. "Begin orbital bombardment. If they want war, we will give them war. Burn their cities. Show them the price of defiance." The remaining 40 ships of the hegemony fleet turned their weapons toward Earth. Beams of energy, each one powerful enough to level a mountain, reached down from space. They struck without warning or mercy. Sao Paulo was first. One moment, 20 million people were going about their lives. The next moment, the city was a crater. The beam lasted only 3 seconds. But 3 seconds was enough to erase everything. Buildings, streets, parks, hospitals, schools. 20 million lives ended in a flash of light. Then Mumbai, then Cairo, then Lagos. Around the world, people screamed and ran and prayed. There was nowhere to hide from weapons that struck from orbit. The hegemony could hit any point on Earth within seconds. Humanity's defiance had hurt them, but now humanity was paying the price. Admiral Chen Wei-lin watched the death toll climb on her screens. Millions dead. Tens of millions. The numbers were too large to understand, too terrible to accept. Her hands shook, but her voice remained steady. "Continue the attack," she ordered. "Launch everything we have left." "Admiral," one of her officers said, tears streaming down his face. They are destroying us. Perhaps we should consider what? Surrender? Admiral Chen turned to face him. You saw what they did to Sao Paulo. You think surrender will stop them? You think they will show mercy to a species that dared to fight back? She pointed at the screens showing the hegemony fleet. They were going to take our planet either way. They were going to enslave our children either way. At least now we have taken something from them. At least now they know that humans do not kneel quietly. The second wave of missiles launched. This time, the drone swarms went with them. The small drones were almost invisible to hegemony sensors. They were too small to be considered threats. They slipped through the chaos of battle like insects through a storm. By the time the hegemony noticed them, it was too late. Thousands of drones flew into engine intakes and power systems. They clogged cooling vents and jammed weapon ports. Each drone carried a small explosive charge, not enough to destroy a ship, but enough to cause damage, enough to create chaos. 3 more hegemony ships lost power. 2 more suffered engine failures. 1 ship's weapon systems went offline entirely, leaving it defenseless. The blink warheads found them. More nuclear fire. More dying ships. More hegemony soldiers screaming as their vessels tore themselves apart. Ambassador Kethral received a communication from his high command. The council wanted to know why the pacification of Earth was taking so long. Why had they lost 10 ships to a primitive species? They are not primitive, Kethral said quietly, watching another of his ships die. They are something else entirely. Something we have never seen before. Explain, the council demanded. Kethral thought about how to describe what he was witnessing. A species that used stolen technology with terrifying creativity. A species that sent thousands of small machines to die for the chance to damage enemy ships. A species that kept fighting even as their cities burned. They are insane, he finally said. They know they cannot win. And they fight anyway. They see their people dying by the millions. And they launch more missiles. They do not fight like a species trying to survive. They fight like a species trying to send a message. What message? The council asked. Kethral watched another wave of human missiles rising from the burning planet below. That the cost of conquest will be higher than we ever imagined. The battle continued through the night. By morning, the hegemony had lost 17 ships. Earth had lost 90 million people. Neither side was willing to stop. This was no longer a conquest. This was a war. Ambassador Kethral retreated. It was not something he had ever done before. In 200 years of service to the hegemony, he had never retreated from any enemy, but he had also never lost 17 ships to a species that should have been crushed in hours. His remaining fleet moved to the edge of the solar system, far from Earth's desperate missiles and suicidal drones. From there, he sent a message to the Galaxy Council, requesting reinforcements. The Council's response arrived within days. They were sending the Subjugation Armada, 300 warships under the command of High Commander Vorath, the most feared military leader in the galaxy. Vorath had conquered 47 species. He had never failed. You have 6 months, Vorath's message said. Keep the humans contained until I arrive. Then we will finish this together. 6 months. Humanity had 6 months to prepare for an enemy 20 times larger than the First Fleet. Secretary General Vasquez gathered the surviving leaders of Earth in an underground bunker. The surface was too dangerous now. Hegemony drones patrolled the skies, destroying any large gathering they detected. Humanity had been driven underground like rats. We won the first battle, Vasquez said, though her voice was heavy with grief. We lost 200 million people. But we won. Now we face a larger enemy with fewer resources. Dr. Okonkwo. What can you give us? Dr. Okonkwo looked 10 years older than he had 6 months ago. He had not slept properly since the invasion began. His hands shook constantly from too much coffee and too little rest. But his mind was still sharp. We captured something from the battle, he said. A damaged hegemony ship drifting near Jupiter. Its crew was dead, killed when our missiles struck nearby vessels. But its fold space drive was intact. The room went silent. We sent a team to retrieve it, Dr. Okonkwo continued. Commander Yuki Tanaka led 24 soldiers into that ship. They fought through damaged corridors filled with automated defenses and wounded hegemony soldiers who had somehow survived. How many came back? General Webb asked quietly. 7. Commander Tanaka was one of them. She brought us the drive. Dr. Okonkwo pressed a button, and images appeared on the screen. They showed a strange device, alien and beautiful, covered in symbols that no human could read. We cannot build these drives ourselves. We do not have the materials or the knowledge. But we can copy this one. We can attach copies to our ships. Not human engines that travel faster than light, but human ships that can jump short distances through space. How short? Admiral Chen asked. A few thousand kilometers. Enough to appear inside an enemy formation, deliver weapons, and jump away before they can respond. Admiral Chen smiled for the first time in months. Ghost ships. Exactly. The construction began immediately. Every shipyard on Earth and Mars worked day and night. They did not build battleships or carriers. They built small, fast vessels barely larger than fighter jets. Each one could carry 2 crew members and 4 nuclear warheads. Each one had a copied fold space drive attached to its hull. They called them the Ghost Fleet. Volunteers came from every nation. They understood what they were signing up for. The ghost ships had no shields, no heavy armor, no chance of surviving a direct hit. Their only protection was speed and surprise. Most of the volunteers knew they would not come back. Commander Tanaka trained them personally. She was a small Japanese woman with a scar across her face from the mission to capture the hegemony drive. She had watched 17 of her soldiers die in those alien corridors. Now she was preparing thousands more to die in space. You are not soldiers, she told them on the first day of training. Soldiers fight to survive. You are something else. You are weapons. Your job is not to live through this battle. Your job is to make sure your warheads find their targets. Do you understand? Yes, Commander, they answered in voices from every country on Earth. The enemy is stronger than us, faster than us, more advanced than us, but they have a weakness. They have never fought an enemy willing to die for victory. They build their tactics around survival, because all species want to survive. We are going to show them something new. We are going to show them humans. The volunteers trained for 5 months. They learned to operate their small ships. They learned to navigate fold space jumps. They learned to accept that they were already dead. On the day the subjugation armada arrived, 10,000 ghost ships launched from hidden bases around the solar system. High Commander Vorath watched them appear on his sensors with contempt. His 300 warships were the most powerful force in the galaxy. Each one was the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could crack planets. These tiny human vessels were nothing, insects against giants. Destroy them, he ordered casually. His weapons officers opened fire. Beams of energy swept through space, vaporizing ghost ships by the dozen. The humans died without even getting close to the hegemony fleet. Then the ghost ships began to jump. They vanished from one location and appeared in another. They materialized inside Vorath's formations, launched their warheads at point-blank range, and jumped away before retaliation could arrive. The warheads used Dr. Okonkwo's blink technology, appearing inside the hegemony ships and detonating. Nuclear fire bloomed across the armada. What is happening? Vorath demanded, watching his ships die one after another. How are they doing this? Unknown, High Commander. Their ships appear to be using fold space technology. Impossible. They are primitives. Their ships are dying by the hundreds, his tactical officer reported. But so are ours. They lose 10 ships for every one of ours they destroy, and they do not stop coming. Vorath stared at the battle display. The tiny human ships swarmed around his fleet like angry insects. They died in waves, but more always appeared. Jump. Attack. Jump. Attack. An endless cycle of sacrifice. This is not warfare, Vorath whispered. This is madness. He opened a channel to Kethral, who watched from his flagship at the edge of the battle. What are these creatures, Kethral? What kind of species sends its people to die like this? Kethral had been asking himself the same question for 6 months. He had studied human history, their wars, their culture. He had tried to understand how a species so young and primitive could fight with such terrible determination. "They are humans," Kethril answered, "and I do not think they know how to surrender." The battle raged for 19 days. The Ghost Fleet was destroyed almost completely. Of 10,000 ships, fewer than 600 survived, but they took 259 hegemony warships with them. When it was over, High Commander Vorath looked at the remnants of his armada. 41 ships remained. 41 ships from 300. The greatest military force in the galaxy had been broken by a species that should have been conquered in days. "Return to Council space," he ordered quietly. "We need to reconsider our approach." The subjugation armada retreated. For the first time in 11,000 years, a seeded species had refused to be seeded. Earth had won. But at what cost? The Galaxy Council met in emergency session for the first time in 3,000 years. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from 4,000 species. Some were tall and thin. Some were short and wide. Some floated in special tanks of liquid. Some existed as clouds of light. They were different in every possible way. But they all shared the same expression: fear. The news from Earth had spread across the galaxy like fire. A primitive species had destroyed the subjugation armada. They had lost hundreds of millions of their own people. But they had refused to kneel. They had fought with weapons made from stolen technology and ships held together with determination, and they had won. "This is unacceptable," said the representative of the Vethkai hegemony. "We must send another fleet. A larger fleet. We must crush these humans before other species get ideas." "With what ships?" asked another representative. "The Armada was our largest force. Vorath lost 259 vessels. It will take us decades to rebuild. Then we wait and rebuild. These humans cannot be allowed to." "Cannot be allowed to what?" The voice came from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look. Ambassador Solis walked slowly toward the center of the room. She was an amphibian, her blue-green skin glistening under the lights. She was known as a diplomat, not a warrior. She had spent her career negotiating peaceful solutions to conflicts. Now the council had given her the most difficult assignment of her life. "Cannot be allowed to defend themselves," Solis continued. "Cannot be allowed to refuse slavery? Cannot be allowed to fight for their freedom?" She looked around the chamber at the representatives of 4,000 species. "Tell me, honored colleagues, what exactly did we expect them to do?" Silence filled the chamber. "We sent a fleet to their world. We told them to surrender or die. We killed 200 million of their people when they refused. And somehow, we are surprised that they fought back?" Solis shook her head. "We created this enemy ourselves. We took a species that knew nothing about us and gave them every reason to hate us." "What do you suggest?" asked the council's presiding officer. "That we simply let them go? After everything that has happened? I suggest we negotiate. I suggest we treat them as equals instead of slaves. I suggest we learn from this disaster before it destroys us all." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some agreed with Solis. Others demanded revenge. The debate lasted for hours. In the end, fear won out over pride. The council authorized Solis to travel to Earth and negotiate peace. She departed the next day. Secretary General Vasquez received the news of Solis's approach with mixed emotions. The war was over, but the cost had been unimaginable. 260 million humans had died. Entire cities had been erased from existence. The surface of Earth was scarred by orbital bombardment. Mars had lost half its population. The Ghost Fleet volunteers had given their lives by the thousands. She chose to meet Solis in Geneva, in the ruins of the old United Nations building. It seemed appropriate somehow. The building where humanity had once gathered to argue about borders and trade would now host negotiations for their place among the stars. Vasquez arrived first. Her left arm was in a sling, broken during an evacuation 3 months earlier. She had refused surgery, saying there were others who needed medical care more than she did. Now she stood among the rubble and waited for the alien diplomat. Solis landed in a small shuttle that looked nothing like the warships that had attacked Earth. She emerged alone, a gesture of trust that Vasquez noted with approval. Behind Vasquez stood a small group of survivors. Dr. Okonkwo, his hands still shaking but his eyes bright. Admiral Chen, who had commanded the defense of Earth from her bunker. Commander Tanaka, one of the few Ghost Fleet pilots who had survived. Secretary General Vasquez, Solis said, bowing her head slightly. I am Ambassador Solis, representing the Galaxy Council. I come to discuss terms of peace. Peace. Vasquez repeated the word, as if testing it. An interesting word. Where was your peace when your ships were burning our cities? I am not here to defend what was done. I am here to ensure it never happens again. Vasquez studied the alien diplomat for a long moment. Solis seemed different from Kethril. There was something in her eyes that looked almost like shame. Very well, Vasquez said finally. Let us discuss terms. But I should warn you, Ambassador. The terms have changed. Changed how? When your colleague first contacted us, he demanded our unconditional surrender. He offered us slavery with different names. Now you come to us after we have destroyed your fleet, and you wish to discuss peace. Vasquez walked slowly towards Solis. Do you understand what that means? Solis nodded slowly. It means you are no longer the conquered. It means you negotiate from strength. Exactly. Vasquez stopped a few meters from the alien. So, here are our terms. First, full recognition of human sovereignty. Earth and all human colonies belong to humanity. Forever. No council interference. No hegemony claims. Nothing. Agreed, Solis said immediately. Second, a seat on your Galaxy Council. We have earned the right to have our voice heard among your 4,000 species. Solis hesitated. That is unprecedented. No species has ever been given a seat without centuries of integration. No species has ever destroyed your subjugation armada. We are unprecedented. After a long pause, Solis nodded. I will recommend it to the Council. I believe they will agree. After a long pause, I will recommend it to the Council. Third, Vasquez continued. A formal apology. Not to us. To every species you have conquered and enslaved before us. Those 312 species that attempted resistance and lost. They deserve to know that someone finally said no and meant it. Solis blinked. You want us to apologize to our servants? I want you to recognize them as people, not property, not resources. People who were forced to submit because they had no other choice. We had a choice. And we chose differently. That choice should mean something for them too. Solis was quiet for a long time. Behind her, the sun was setting over the ruins of Geneva. The sky was red and orange. Beautiful, despite the destruction below. There is one more thing, Vasquez said. Your fold space technology. We want all of it. The drives, the mathematics, everything. We learned enough to build weapons. Now we want to build ships that can travel between stars. We want to explore the galaxy as equals, not as slaves. You are asking for a great deal. We have paid for it with 200 million lives, with cities that no longer exist, with volunteers who flew into your guns knowing they would not return. Vasquez's voice cracked slightly, but she did not look away. We have paid in blood and fire and tears. Now we want something in return. Solis looked at the humans standing behind Vasquez, the tired physicist with shaking hands, the admiral who had commanded the defense of a planet, the pilot who had survived when thousands of her companions had not. They were broken and exhausted and grieving, and they were absolutely undefeated. I will take your terms to the Council, Solis said quietly. I believe they will accept. 3 months later, they did. 50 years after the war, the galaxy had changed. Humans traveled between stars in ships they had built themselves. Human representatives sat on the Galaxy Council, often arguing, sometimes agreeing, always refusing to be ignored. The 312 species that had been enslaved before humanity were slowly being freed. Their worlds returned. Their dignity restored. The Council's official records called it the human incident. They described it as a bureaucratic error, a misclassification, an unfortunate misunderstanding. But everyone in the galaxy knew the truth. Humans were the species who, when told to kneel, had asked, "Or what?" and then proven they meant it. And the galaxy would never forget.